Alrighty, guys. Welcome back to the Sleuth Intuition channel. I'm your host, Patrick Vallejos, and we are broadcasting to the world live from Phoenix, Arizona. Want to welcome you all back. Today, we are diving into the Delphi murders case. Still a lot going on with this case, a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of strange going ons, and I'm sure you guys have a few questions, and I'm sure there's a lot still to be discussed here. Today's titled the Tinfoil Hat Club because there's a lot of people who are blatantly ignoring the simple information that would get them out from underneath that tinfoil hat. But yet they refuse to keep it simple. I don't know if you've ever heard the term keep it simple, stupid. So I think today we're really going to focus in on Richard Allen's alibi. Nobody can answer that question. What is Richard Allen's alibi? Why those who support Richard Allen focused so much on Brad Holder's alibi, Patrick Westfall's alibi. They focused on everybody's alibis, right? They scrutinized it, they dissected it, they demanded verification. What about for Richard Allen? No, he doesn't have an alibi. It's okay. He's innocent. He's not here to prove that he's innocent. You're here to prove that he's guilty. He doesn't need an alibi. He went home after the trails. So what? Nobody saw him. He was home. Patrick Westfall was at home. Well, difference is Patrick Westfall was with his son, and he has somebody there to say, hey, yeah, we were here all day long. And he took a lie detector test. Richard Allen refused a lie detector test and has nobody to validate his alibi. And he doesn't even have an alibi. I think one time in a Holman interview, he said, I took a short walk and I went home. Okay. So I think we'll focus in mainly on if Richard Allen, well, let's focus in on the three girls. Richard Allen says, I saw three girls while I was walking on the trails. The three girls, the prosecution would like us to believe are the ones mentioned in the probable cause affidavit. So if those are not the girls that Richard Allen ran into, the three girls, right? Where are these women? Where are these young girls that he ran into? I mean, they're just not going to come forward ever. What's up, Peggy? Brad from outside of the grid. Night Shadow, welcome in. Jerry, always good to see you. Cheeks. My guy Dan, what up? How you doing? Hope you're having a great day. They are under 10 trolls. Yeah, I mean, if you run into somebody who's just flat out, not saying that Richard Allen didn't get, due process or whatever, but just flat out saying that he's an innocent man, just ask him, what is his alibi? What is Richard Allen's alibi? Nobody can answer that. They always say, oh, well, Patrick Westfall, or they always say something else, the kangaroo court. Just answer the simple question. What is Richard Allen's alibi? And if anybody wants to call in, just let me know. Preferably those who are supporting Richard Allen, and call in. We'll discuss this. The question is very simple for today's chat, guys. What is Richard Allen's alibi? Not do we need to prove it? Not do we need to verify it? I just simply want to know what it is. I don't want to verify it. I don't care if it's validated. I don't care if it's been ran down. I just want to know what it is. What is the man's alibi? Right? I feel like it's like the simplest question, but anybody that supports him, they refuse to answer it. It's like, no, I don't want to, it'll destroy their dialectic is what it is. They can't, they're holding on by a thread. And that question is the scissors, and I think alibis are important for anybody who's involved in a criminal case. Right? If you're accused of a crime, the most important thing is your alibi. So if you want to track down, Brad Holder's alibi, Patrick Westfall's, yeah, for sure. That all needs to be verified. But most importantly, the alibi that needs to be verified is the person that's on trial. The person that's on trial for murder. He's accused of sexual assault and murder of two teenage girls. Right? During that entire trial, you're not going to talk about what you were doing and where you were. And people who are supporting Richard Allen, they won't even flinch at that. So this tells me that they're purposely ignoring the information because they prefer the delusion. They find it entertaining. They don't want that to be destroyed. They don't want the delusion to be destroyed or diminished. They enjoy it. They enjoy the cult that they've joined. But you can't go against the cult. The cult has a temperature. And if you try to adjust that temperature, you'll get thrown to the side or eaten up. Cheek says there was a nice little interview with Augur yesterday. I watched most of it. It was pretty amazing how well she was able to weave garbage with fact and still come across likable. Pretty impressive. I wasn't impressed with her at all. It was a lot of the same crap, a lot of the talk about cell phones, and people are still eating that shit up. You know, they won't listen about the bullet. That's all junk science. But when it comes to the cell phone and something being plugged in, oh man, they're all over that. They are all over that shit. What's up, Andy? Yeah, the crime scene is his alibi. He said, I saw 3 girls, right? Well, the 3 girls that were there around that time said they saw the bridge guy. So if those aren't the 3 girls, they saw bridge guy, but wasn't Richard Allen. Where's the 3 girls that he ran into? They just vanished into thin air, huh? Interesting. What's up, Joe Newman? Cheek says, which is his alibi? Why did his story change? Where is his phone? Why does his wife have a different story as to what he told everyone else? I mean, let's just stop at alibi. What is his alibi? Imagine sitting on trial and everybody's pointing their finger at you. And there's nobody there. We know for a fact, okay, he confessed, right, to Dr. Walla. Let me pull up some of this information here. It's getting a little cloudy, a little foggy. In the video, October 26, 2022 interview, Holman told Allen police had taken gun, knives, clothes, and his car. They discussed guns and Allen's time in the military. Allen said he hadn't shot in a long time. When Holman asked if Allen had loaned out any items police seized, he responded, if I did, I certainly don't remember. Investigators asked Allen if he was carrying knives or guns on the trail. Allen said he just went for a short walk that day. Okay. So he told Walla that he was hanging out with his mother and his sister in Mexico, Indiana. We interviewed Bob Mata, and he verified that information. He said, yes, it wasn't discussed in trial, but that is 100% factual information. So we know that Richard Allen was with his mother and his sister, and that was part of his confession. You guys don't find that odd? That information that we find to be true is also information that he's spouting out as part of a confession to Dr. Walla? Nobody's seen him on those trails. Right? And why didn't anybody interview the mom and ask the question of his sister? What time did he leave? Think about it, guys. How does an innocent man go through a trial and not once discuss his alibi? Nobody asked him. Nobody said, oh, nobody verified it. Nobody came forward to say yes. He seemed fine that day. His mother never came forward and said Richard Allen was fine that day. You guys don't find that strange? A man goes through an entire double murder trial and can't explain in clear detail what he was doing that day. Nobody can explain it. And you guys don't find that strange? And people who are supporting Richard Allen will not talk about this. This is kryptonite for them. They got to block it out because it'll destroy everything that's going on in their mind. It'll melt the tinfoil right off their head. They can't answer the question. It's always deflected. Well, Patrick Westfall, his alibi was that he was at home. Okay, well, he's not on trial. He's not on trial, and he's not the one that got sentenced. If he was sitting on trial, I'd be asking the same question. Did you verify his alibi? And I remember the same people who are supporting Richard Allen now would not shut up about Brad Holder's alibi, right? They wouldn't shut up about it. Oh, he could have falsified his clock in and clock out records. He could have had somebody else scan him into the gym. Nobody's asking anything about Richard Allen and his alibi. I just need somebody to help explain this to me. You're going to support a man who's been convicted of killing 2 children. Yet when somebody asks you what his alibi is, you say, I don't know. It wasn't discussed. I believe he went home. Well, which is it? You're telling me that you're going to go through an entire murder trial and nobody's going to discuss your alibi? And you're expecting, guys, I get it. You're innocent until proven guilty. Well, they have enough probable cause to charge you and you're facing the trial. You're just going to say, oh, no, it's up to you guys to prove it. I don't have to explain my alibi. There you go, Andy. Yeah, it's some kind of wiring. It's a wiring issue for sure. Good to see you, Jill. Big Fish, what up? Right field, welcome in. Shane, good to see you. So is that Richard Allen's alibi? I went to the trails, was a short walk, and then I went home. Is that it? I mean, that's fine if that's his alibi. I just want to know what is the alibi. I'm not here to debate about it with you. I'm not here to verify it. I just want to know what it is. The man's accused of killing 2 children in one of the most high profile cases in Indiana's history, and we don't have a clear understanding of what Richard Allen was doing that day. The most information about his whereabouts and his coming and goings from that day come from him. He said, I was with my mother in Mexico, Indiana. They invited me to lunch. I said nope. And I went and did something else. I went and grabbed a beer, drank 3, stopped by my house, grabbed my jacket, went to the trails, saw Abby and Libby, did something with my gun, was attempting to sexually assault them, was interrupted by a van coming down the private drive, panicked, forced the girls across the creek, and murdered them and covered them with sticks. That came out of Richard Allen's own mouth. Okay, we're like, okay, so I was, maybe he was under psychosis and he's using the information that was provided to him and he's telling them what they want to hear. Now, right from Bob Motta's mouth, he told us directly that he spoke with the family and Richard Allen, all of them, and confirmed that he was with his mother and his sister in Mexico, Indiana. Okay. Are you not seeing what's going on here? He's verifying that part of his confession is 100% accurate. So if he does have an alibi, why didn't his mother sit up on that stand and say, yes, Richard Allen left. We were hanging out, but he left around 10 o'clock. He left at 10, went home, got his jacket, went on a short walk at the Monon High Bridge Trail, and then went home way before 1:30. If that was the truth, the people that he was with, which have been confirmed to be his mother and his sister, would have came forward and said, yes, he left us at 10, which gives him plenty of time to make it home. 40-minute drive. You're home. You got your jacket. You got your beer, whatever. and the timeline is questionable now. Okay, well, we have people that saw you, Richard Allen, on the trails around 12. So this tells me that you didn't show up at 1:30, right? We had people on the trails all day long. Nobody saw Richard Allen before that. Richard Allen claims to have seen 3 girls. Okay, where are these 3 girls? You're telling me that they're just never going to come forward. Richard Allen's gone by 1:30, runs into 3 girls. They've never been identified. Auger argues that the vehicle that's seen on the Hoosier Harvest Store video, you can't really identify any of the marks. Oh, thanks, Dan. All right, we have a sponsor, Curious Contrarian. I appreciate you, Dan. What's up, Riot? Peggy O. What would be a great question for Cecil and Holman? I'm not even here to argue about it. I just want to know what it is. I'm not here to say, "Oh, well, are you sure that's his alibi or did you verify?" No, just what is the man's alibi? He went on trial for a double murder, has been convicted, and if you ask his supporters what his alibi is, they don't know. They can't answer that question. They don't even ask themselves that question because it doesn't matter if he's guilty or innocent. They've already joined the cult, and you can't go against that grain. Because if you do, guess what? All your new little pals and friends will ban you. You'll be banished. You're not going to lose all that camaraderie. But one thing that they all have in common, thank you, Alex. I appreciate you. Shout out to Dan and Alex for sponsoring today's live stream. One thing they all have in common is they don't give a shit about the victims' families. They don't care about stepping all over them. They don't care about accusing innocent people. Like, we're talking about some really cold-blooded people here. I mean, they just very callous and cold. So you have to be, in order to join the Tinfoil Hat Club, you have to not care about victims' families because it all starts with bashing them, right? That's the beginning of the conspiracy theory. The Kelsey stuff. Richard Allen's not part of any of those conspiracies. He's innocent. So you have to have a pretty good hatred for law enforcement and the government in general. And then you have to have zero love for the victims of violent crime. The family members who are left behind to pick up the pieces. You have to totally. Oh, somebody sent me a Cash App. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that. So, if in your mind you think that Kelsey had something to do with this, or Mike Patty's part of the Freemasonry group that participated in this ritual, you're off to a great start. I don't trust law enforcement, but I don't have an unreasonable mistrust of them. I don't trust anybody. But I think that's a safe place to start. What is Richard Allen's alibi? And if you can answer that and you would like to call in, let me know in the chat. I'll give you a link. What's up, Susan Marie? It's been years and no other evidence of unknown suspects. And that's all good. But I mean, let's just focus in right now on the alibi. I don't care if it's proven or not. I'm just curious, what is it? Is that his alibi? I went on a short hike and then I went home. Okay, where's the 3 girls that you ran into? And why did nobody see you on the trails? And why did nobody come forward that you were with that day, like your sister and your mother, to help you with this alibi? You Richard Allen supporters, have you not ever asked yourself that question? Do you not care? When it came to Brad Holder, you guys wouldn't shut up about it. You were coming up with all these conspiracy theories that being work, so therefore We can't verify whether or not it was real or not. Records show Holder, who worked at a landfill about a half an hour away from Delphi, clocked out at 2:45 p.m. Right? That's not good enough for these people. Oh, well, did you see the video? Did they have him on video? He then checked in using a key fob at a gym in Logansport at 4:08 p.m., making this mathematically impossible for him to have killed those girls. There's his alibi. Now, let's change from Brad Holder over to Richard Allen. What is Richard Allen's alibi? How do you go through a murder trial and not once discuss that? Oh, yeah, but I'm going to stick up for the guy because it was obviously Freemasons, right? Look above my head. Got Nick McClelland, Brad Holder. They're both Freemasons. And then you got Holman. He's obviously a Freemason, right? They're all part of the Illuminati, right? I mean, come on, guys. Good to see you, Sydney. Yeah, you guys better stay warm out there. It's getting cold. If he's not, he's being introduced. He's getting there, Dan. You gonna eat your cornbread? This is my cornbread. Sydney says, how do you think the stuff about the white van got out prior to testimony? Walla is a problem to me. What do you mean the white van got out? The thing is, it doesn't matter if it got out. It got out after Richard Allen talked to Walla. So it doesn't matter when it got out. They have it on video. Richard Allen is confessing to the murder in detail. And now details that we've confirmed that we can verify. We can now verify 100% that Richard Allen was in Mexico, Indiana that day. So if he's confessing, if that's part of his confession, isn't it to say that the rest is accurate and truthful? Or are we just going to ignore that? Peggy says, I would also like to know what his alibi of the unknown DNA and the contaminated DNA. What do you mean the alibi for DNA? I don't quite get that. What's up, Melissa? Happy New Year. Thank you, Big Fish. Be like Big Fish. Don't be a scrub. Hit the thumbs up. And if you can, go share the video. Joe Newman says there isn't one. So if there isn't an alibi, how are you supporting Richard Allen? How are you supporting a man without an alibi? He's been convicted by 12 jurors of his, a jury of his peers. They had the best seats in the House. They were able to go over the evidence multiple times, recall evidence if they needed. They had a front row seat watching these videos of him in prison and him confessing to Dr. Walla. So I'm just going to go ahead and destroy your narrative right now. And it's simple. By asking the question, what is Richard Allen's alibi? It's just pure kryptonite for these folks. They hate that question. Because then you're forcing them to ask that same question to themselves. Like, shit, what is Richard Allen's alibi? How do you go through a murder trial and you have no explanation for what you were doing that day? Nobody to back it up. Not even your kids, not a neighbor, not any cell phone data, nothing. I understand it's innocent until proven guilty, but man, you're already on trial. They're accusing you of murder, and you're not going to come forward and do your best to explain what you were doing that day? And people who are supporting Richard Allen, they don't find that strange. So just hit him with that, guys. It's very simple. Charlotte Frambos, he does not have an alibi. He has admitted to be on the trails around the time of the crime. Well, did he? I mean, I know that he kind of changed that story that he was gone by 1:30, that he was on the trails between 12 and 1:30. And that's fine. If that's your alibi, all you got to do is lay it out for us. You're not even going to attempt to lay it out for the jury? How do you expect anybody to find you innocent and you're not even going to talk about what you were doing that day? I mean, I don't even care if it's a lie at this point. I just want to know, like, what is he saying is his alibi? Steve, so y'all think Dan Doolin is a straight up guy, huh? What does Dan Doolin have to do with anything that we've been talking about? See, this is what I'm talking about, guys, right here. Steve is a prime example. Prime example. He can't answer the question. He can't even process the question because it destroys everything. Try it on for size, Steve. What is Richard Allen's alibi? Give it a try. The most important part of his defense wasn't even discussed in the trial. Nobody came forward to say, yeah, Richard Allen was with me that morning. He left by 10. He could have easily been to the trails and back. No, Richard Allen's innocent because Gold didn't give him a fair trial. You know, they don't want to ask that question. What was his alibi? If he's not the killer, where is he? And if he's home, that's fine. He doesn't need a witness. I just want to know, is that what he's telling us? What's up, V. Marie? Welcome in. Joe Newman says, we know he didn't drink just 3 beers. Maybe he did. I don't think so. I think what we're hearing are half truths. Richard Allen also admitted that he was molested as a child. Seems like a weird thing to confess to. Hiawatha, what's up? Sleuth, as far as the timeline, did we hear Allen say he was on the trails from 2 to 3:30, or was that only in the PCA? We don't have access to his initial interview with Doolin. Well, the note stated 1:30 to 3:30. And then apparently his defense team put out that he changed that from 12 to 1:30, I believe. And that's fine. If that's your alibi, we just need the alibi. Before we can scrutinize an alibi, right? Before we can poke holes in an alibi, we need to know what the fuck it is. And for anybody supporting Richard Allen, what is Richard Allen's alibi? I mean, it's very simple. I don't understand how you can support somebody and not be able to answer that question. I get all this other stuff, right? You want to talk about Doolin, you want to talk about Patrick Westphal, Brad Holder, Judge Gold. She's such a bitch. You know, she's got it out for Richard Allen. You know, she's partial. Forget about all of that. Stay focused, guys. This is a very simple question. I mean, it's beyond simple. And it's the easiest way to destroy that entire narrative. It is pure kryptonite for these freaks. Sees through. The only time the trail was empty was between 1:30 p.m. and 1:48 p.m. when BB returned. Rick said after Freedom Bridge, he saw nobody else. That is the only time that is possible. Yeah. And I mean, it's just a simple question. If he left before 1:30, that's fine. But why hasn't he come out and said that? And why hasn't anybody been able to support that? Steve says, Dan Doolin stood there on stage from day one. How did he not know? I get that. Steve. Does that mean that Richard Allen is innocent because Dan Doolin's a fuck up? Hiawatha, I don't have access to the Holman or Mullins interrogations. I'm pretty sure I have them. What's up, Frank? I wonder why Kathy didn't go up. Forget Kathy. Why didn't Richard Allen go up on the stand? I know it's never a good idea, but if you don't have an alibi, if you can't sit up there and tell people where you were, how do you have any chance of winning that trial? And I feel like I'm the only one that feels that that's very strange. Nobody else is even having this conversation. So it's a simple question. When I ask you about Richard Allen's alibi, I don't want to hear about Patrick Westfall. I don't want to hear about Brad Holder. I don't want to hear about Dan Doolin. I don't want to hear about how Bias and Judge Goal and Nick and Holman and all these guys are. I just simply want to know what Richard Allen's alibi is, because we can't go back. He's on trial. They have probable cause for his arrest. He's sitting there. He's facing 130 years in prison, and he has nothing to say about what he was doing that day. It's very strange to see people support him knowing that he can't explain that, knowing that he stood in prison and threatened to slice people's throats. So if you support Richard Allen, I'm going to keep asking you that question. And I'm also going to ask you how you support a convicted child killer without an alibi. You may not be able to prove your alibi, but at least you'll have one, right? I don't know. I went on a drive by myself. Like, even Brian Koberger has an alibi. Is it believable? Hell no. But at least he has one. V. Marie says, Kathy divorcing at some point. What happened? Jerry, thanks for the Cash App. That was very thoughtful of you guys. So we have 4 sponsors. Looks like Dan's hitting the super chat again. So Dan, Alex, let's go to the super chat here. Never forget, it is everyone but Richard Allen. When one fans divert to another, rinse, lather, repeat. What is this? Is it just a filter? If you're going to be part of this cult, everything goes through this filter. The Richard Allen is innocent filter. If every comment that you make on social media doesn't go through that filter, you can't be in this cult. We will not be your friend. You like hanging out in this chat during this live stream? Either you agree with what we say or you got to go. How dare you say that Richard Allen is innocent? He doesn't need an alibi. You ask about Richard Allen's alibi, what do they say? Oh, well, what about Patrick Westfall? What about him? He's not on trial for double murder. Of course you would have to get his. I would ask the same question about him if he was being charged with this crime, right? They didn't have a problem scrutinizing Brad Holder's alibi. They still won't accept it. The dude has it's solid. It's clad. Oh, well, he could have done this. He could have had somebody scan him in the gym. It's always something with these people. But then when you ask them the simple question, okay, what is Richard Allen's alibi? I don't want to scrutinize that. We can't talk about that. Let's go back to Brad Holder's alibi. Let's go back to Patrick Westfall. He was at home. Yeah, well, he's not on trial for double homicide of 2 kids. Richard Allen is. Now he's been convicted. So don't you think it was a good idea to try to work on the alibi? Just a thought. It is fucking fake camaraderie. Like, you can join the cult as long as you say what we approve. Fuck that. So I'm going to give you, this is what I'm doing is I'm arming you guys with kryptonite. We're not going anywhere. We're part of this community. We've helped create this community. We've helped mold it, you know. We've done our best to kind of step away from the Delphi murders and continue on covering other cases. But every day in the comments, it's something. It's something crazy. So I'm just going to keep hitting you guys with this over and over again. Don't talk to me about Richard Allen unless you can tell me what his alibi is. And we're going to do it like this. If you want to call in, and you're being triggered by what I'm saying, use this link. Because I'm absolutely curious. I'm not being sarcastic either. I'm just extremely curious. Wife Lilith, welcome in. The Saint, welcome in. And honestly, I'm just curious. You know, we don't need to debate. We don't need to argue about it. I just want to know, what is Richard Allen's alibi? And if you support him and you can't answer that question, you have ulterior motives. And you may not even know what it is. It might be something deep in your subconscious that you're not even aware of. Oh, I'm going to scrutinize Brad Holder's alibi. And then even when it's proven that he has a ironclad alibi, I'm still going to deny it. Still not going to believe it. But I'm not going to go over there and question Richard Allen in that fashion. See, that's the difference between me and you. I'll question Richard Allen the same way that I question Brad Holder. And I was questioning this whole ritualistic stuff before anybody ever talked about it. This is old shit to me. And if Brad Holder was charged with the murders of Abby and Libby, I'd be asking the same question. What is your alibi? Yeah, that's true. Yep, Hiawatha. The defense was hoping that the jury was watching a tortured man. You know, here's all the videos from him in prison. These are his confessions. And then also, the people who support Richard Allen, they've allowed themselves to believe certain things that are all hypothetical. For instance, if he wasn't put in solitary confinement, is what they like to call it, but really it's safekeeping, right? If he wasn't placed under a safekeeping order, he would have never made those confessions. You don't know that. If he wasn't placed under safekeeping, he may not even be alive today. He may have been able to take his own life. What's up, CJK? Yeah, he's not getting an appeal either. So I hate to crush those dreams. Bell Mayhem, what alibi are you referencing? He told where and when and what he had done that day. Okay, what was it then? So it sounds like Bell Mayhem can answer the question. What was Richard Allen's alibi? We might finally have somebody who can actually answer the question. Bell says he told where and when and what he had done that day. Okay, what is it? I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong. I'm just curious. What's up, Goat Dog? Seemed to me like Richard Allen was relieved now that the trial is over. I agree. I think he's accepted it. He's not interested in an appeal. He's not going to get one. His defense team didn't mention in court once about him leaving at 1:30. There you go, Shane. Why? Because his car was as pale as day at 1:27 p.m. going to the trails, was clear as day. And I mean, that's fine. Was that his car? I don't know. And that's fine. If that's not your car, Richard Allen, if this isn't your car passing in front of the Hoosier Harvest Store video, that's fine, buddy. There's a lot of cars that might look like yours. People from out of town, people passing through Indiana. Maybe somebody got a rental car and they're from fucking Europe. That's all good and fine. If that's not you, Richard Allen, driving in front of the Hoosier Harvest Store at 127, where are you at this time? What are you doing? If you're not committing this murder, where are you? Not once did anybody during that trial, trust me, we covered this trial every day, verbatim. Everything that was released to the public about this trial, we covered. There wasn't anything that we missed or skipped. They didn't talk about Richard Allen's alibi one time during that trial. Oh, I'm going to support this man who's convicted of killing two girls, Abby and Libby, who we've come to love. You know, they're everybody's daughters. All of the parents who have been obsessed with the Delphi case. If you're anything like me, it's because you looked at the photographs of Abby and Libby and you saw your own kids. You saw your daughter and her friend. And you imagined what your life would be like now if something like this happened. The people who are supporting Richard Allen, they don't see things that way. They don't care about the victims. They don't care about the tragedy. They're here to piece together all of the evil, right? Imagine what a great accomplishment it will be to get somebody like Richard Allen off. It's more like a task. It's like the Gaslight Olympics, right? If they get off on convincing you guys, you know how many comments I got after the Defense Diaries interviewed Jennifer Auger, and everybody was just quoting what she said verbatim. It's like, do you guys even don't think like I think? Don't believe what I tell you to believe. Think for yourselves, do your own research. And it's funny when you ask people, what's Richard Allen's alibi? What do they say? Oh, well, what about Dan Doolin standing on the stage? What about this? What about that? Nobody can answer that question. It's because they don't even want to ask themselves that questions. It will destroy all the fun that they're having. And these folks are genuinely enjoying these types of conspiracies. You know, all the different angles they can come up with. And they get into this echo chamber and they're like, oh, well, what if this and what if that? And it turns into this spectacle. Joe says, exactly, Sleuth. Richard Allen has no alibi, no friends to step up for him, nothing. Okay, let's say Richard Allen didn't come in contact with anybody. He left. What time did we know that he was in contact with his mother in Mexico, Indiana? What time did he leave her? You're not going to talk about that in court at all? You're being accused of killing two teenage girls, Richard Allen. What the fuck were you doing if you weren't committing the murders? I'm not going to talk about that. Mom, what was your son doing that day? I'm not going to participate in this trial. The only reason that they're not participating is because it hurts Richard Allen. It's the only reason for it. Richard Allen could have got up on that stage, up on the stand, and said, this is what I did. I left at way before 1:30. You know, nobody can really vouch for me, but I went home and I took a nap. Nobody's supposed to vouch for me. It's not my fault that I didn't come into contact with anybody. But the truth is, when it's not mathematically possible, the reason that they didn't interview his mother or anybody about what he was doing that day is because it puts him into the bridge guy box. You know, it checks off more boxes. You know, he most likely left his mother like around 11:30, 12. So he's telling us that he was out of that park or the Monon High Bridge Trail. He was gone from there by 1:30. If you were to ask his mother to back that up, she would have to lie. Because mathematically, the timing just does not fit. for him to have left way before 1:30. They're not going to lie for him. Yeah, V. And that's fine. You know, if he was dressed like the bridge guy, doesn't make him a killer. Hey, Cindy, thanks for the super chat. I don't believe their hype. I know you don't, Cindy, but there's a lot of people who are being gaslit. So we're just going to keep it simple. Whenever you have to question Richard Allen's conviction, just ask yourself, what was his alibi? And how does a man go through an entire double murder trial without telling the jury what he was doing, even if it's a lie? Big Fish says, I'd like to know what cleared him. What did police have for his alibi? What was your alibi for that day? Everything you did that day. It's tricky 7 years later. It's not tricky. It's not tricky at all. Because I've gone back to verify what I was doing. I was at work. I have my time card and everything. It's not hard. There's nothing tricky about it. Especially when you're the one that called in the tip line. You know what you were doing that day. It's not a trick. It's not a trick question. It's very simple. And even if you can't really recall, well, I'm pretty sure, I went to my mom's. Later on, I went to the trails, right? I admitted to you guys I went to the trails. So I did go to the trails, but I left there at 1:30, and I'm pretty sure that I went home. I was really tired, and I took a nap, and then I woke up when my wife got home. Oh, well, nobody can verify what you were doing that time. No, unfortunately, I was alone. Like, we didn't even get a lie. We didn't get anything. Because the truth is, there's people there that will destroy anything that he said. The truth is, when he left his mother and his sister in Mexico, it fits right in the timeline. It fits with him going to his home and getting to the trails at 1:26. Probably down to the second. The amount of time it takes for him to go get a six-pack, go home and get his jacket, and be to the trails by 1:27 is probably like a perfect fit, a perfect puzzle where all those pieces just fit right in with each other. That's why it wasn't part of the trial, guys. So you can support a child killer, but it's going to be hard for you to do it when I keep asking that question, right? What's Richard Allen's alibi? It's hard for you because eventually you're going to have to answer the question. Yeah, I agree with you, Goat Dog. I guarantee he's relieved. Joe Newman says, Hiawatha, we are supposed to. The state of Indiana owes no one but the families involved in each. That's not true, Joe. We live in a very public country, and those people work for the people, right? Our tax dollars pay for all of that whole process. If anything, they're obligated to release that to the public, and they will in some way or the other. But yeah, it's definitely owed to the public. But I get what you're saying. That should be the way it is, but that's just not true. They owe the public all of the information that's involved with this case, especially when it was Indiana's tax dollars that paid for the process and paid the wages of those who arrested Richard Allen. Jesse Ventura, aka the entire Delulu community. Yeah, just asking questions. That's it. I'm just asking a simple question. Shane says they will blame Kelsey, Brad, Ron, and the man in the moon, just not Richard. Yeah, don't accuse Richard. But why? What is it? Yep, exactly, CJK. Sleuth, I came here to try to learn and understand. Same reason I watch other creators. What do you mean? Joe Newman Sleuth, is it possible to bring the communities together? No, it's not. Nope. It is not possible. When you have people, the reason that one community is upset at the other is because they're blaming victims. They're blaming victims, and they're not connected with reality. So you can't have a discussion with somebody like that. They're not open. They're not open-minded. And I'm proving that to you. The fact that they just leap right over Richard Allen's alibi. They won't talk about it. Their answer is always a deflection. So I'm just arming you guys with that kryptonite. Stephanie. No, but seriously, how do you go through a trial where you're being accused of murder and you can't tell anybody what you were doing? Like even Brian Koberger said, "Oh, well, I was just driving around." You know, nobody can verify that, but it doesn't mean I'm lying. The difference with Richard Allen is that he wasn't alone that day, and people can verify what he was doing. People can discredit his timeline. And we know for a fact that part of his confession was that he was with his mother and his sister in Mexico, Indiana. We know that that was a fact. So if that part was factual of his confession, I think it's safe to say that the rest of the information provided to Dr. Walla in that confession is a fact. Oh, I don't want to talk about Richard Allen's alibi. Let's talk about all of the calls that came in on the cell phone at 4:30 a.m. and the fact that there was headphones plugged in there. Don't give me any of that water talk. You want to talk about that? You don't want to talk about the alibi? Okay. The most important piece that Richard needed to defend himself, he didn't even attempt because he couldn't attempt. You can't lie. The reason Richard Allen doesn't have an alibi or didn't present an alibi was because people could explain that it was a lie. Right there, they have the marker. What time did you leave your mom? You said they invited you to go have lunch and you blew them off. What time was that? It was probably around 10 o'clock, 10 or 11. I'm going to say around 11, 11:30. The exact amount of time it takes for him to leave Mexico, Indiana, go buy beer. And where did he buy the beer, right? If he tells people where he bought the beer, then they can go to the CCTV footage. They can ask for a receipt. Nope, he can't give any of that because that's evidence against him. But when you're sitting there supporting Richard Allen, who is a convicted killer, and I understand people are wrongly convicted all the time, but even those people had some kind of an alibi. He can't even attempt to give an alibi because anybody that he brings into it, okay, you have an alibi? Well, we need to bring up your mom to verify that. Well, I can't lie to the courtroom, so I can't go up on that stand. You're not going to make me lie. You're not going to make me break the law. Okay, well, we can't call his mother because his mother's going to tell the jury that he left around 11:30. It's a 40-minute drive. So that means that he got to back to Delphi and to those. It would be already around 12:30 before he even got back, let alone buying beer, stopping by his home, and then walking the trail. Okay, so you were on the trail between 12:30 and 1:30. Well, we've interviewed multiple people that were on the trail between that time, and nobody saw you, Richard Allen. Just don't comment on others for fear of manslaughter charge. I learned nothing new anymore. What's up, Audra? Welcome in this account. Oof, what fresh hell is happening now? This is kind of sparking from the Jennifer Auger. You know, everybody wants to talk about everything but Richard Allen's alibi. And I just find it very strange. You want to talk about A cell phone reporting that something was plugged into the auxiliary jack, but the person who's reading that information can't explain it. She's just running her equipment and then reading the report. She doesn't understand. Auger didn't understand it. She's just telling, well, this is what it said. It said that something was plugged into the auxiliary port. That's what it said here on the list. She doesn't know why it says that. She can't explain it. She can't explain any possibilities. And if you try, it's junk science. Right? They're all about that. They're all about the junk. Anything that explains how Richard Allen is innocent, that's not junk science. But when it comes to the bullet and all of that, yeah, that's ridiculous. Now, if they were using the same science to try to prove Richard Allen was innocent, they would be all for it. Then they wouldn't shut up about tool mark evidence. If it was beneficial to Richard Allen, it would be the best science known to mankind. I listened 10 minutes of her and turned her off. Yeah, they all have this thing in common where they've accused DP, even harassed his family, accused Ron Logan, and then eventually he died with all of that bullshit. They've accused Kelsey. They've dragged her through the mud quite a bit. What's up, shrooms? Watching fish, catfishing, plenty of fish, etc. What's up, Fight for Justice? Goat Dog says, it seemed to me that Richard Allen seemed relieved once he was convicted. Yeah, you're like the third person to say that, and I agree with you. It's like he knows that he is where he belongs, and now he can start his next chapter of his life. At least that was the impression I got. Me too. Richard Allen's defense blaming Kelsey again. Oh, did I miss that? I think I might have missed that part. The defense were hoping their league to nonsense had gotten to one jury member. Thank goodness the jury done their job. Yeah, they did. I mean, they purposely leaked that information out knowing that they were going to protect the person who leaked it. And look, he's done. He has no criminal record. He did his, I don't know, community service or whatever it was that he had to do. And it's no longer on his record. And they almost got, well, they attempted to get a guilty man off using some kind of crazy conspiracy. Like, I'm telling you guys, they don't give a shit. And that's how you have to be as a defense attorney. Like, I don't give a shit. You're hiring me to defend you. I need to find the best defense possible by any means necessary. I'm going to put on my blockers. I don't care about the truth. I don't care about any of that. You're hiring me for a job, and that's to defend you. And I'm going to do my best to find that defense. Let's just hope the jury bites on the hook, the fish hook, the way that a lot of these Tinfoil Hat Club members took that bait. That's what they were hoping for. That's what they were hoping for. Oh, I bet you do. I bet you do. I ain't messing with that. And that poor jury was stalked by some of the groupies. What sane person does that? Yeah, the same group of people were trying to identify the jury like they were some kind of enemy army, It's just fucking weird. You guys are weird. Thank God I found the Kryptonite. What is Richard Allen's alibi? If you want to destroy these people, that's all you got to do is ask them. Watch them squirm. Watch them deflect. Because it's like they never even asked themselves that question. I'm just going to go forth with this full campaign, this Richard Allen is innocent campaign, but I'm not even going to scrutinize him myself first. Like, you're not even going to do your own investigation. You're just going to join the cult. What's up, Kathy? Good to see you. If you're having a good day. Motion detected in the front yard. Lila says, Logan Holder is such a nice kid. He is honestly one of the nicest people I know. People have no clue what they're saying and what they've caused their family also. Exactly. This isn't a movie. These people are disconnected from reality. And honestly, if Abby wasn't dating Logan Holder, we wouldn't be having a discussion of Odinism. Remember, it was Richard Allen that brought up the Odinism to his defense team. I'm not saying that there weren't things pointing at Odinism in the discovery, but they didn't go looking for it until Richard Allen said something to them, right? And they wouldn't have, and the only reason they were able to piece it together, they used Logan Holder as a piece of tape, right? Without Logan Holder, there is no Odinism. If Abby was not dating Logan, we wouldn't even be talking about it. Those sticks would have never even been tied in with Odinism, because it doesn't work without Logan. It doesn't work without Logan connecting Brad. Logan is the piece of tape that connects the girls to Brad, right? But he has an alibi. Oh, well, the alibi was fake. Okay, so we can scrutinize his alibi, but we're not going to talk about Richard Allen's. I'm telling you guys, it's the Kryptonite. You're welcome. I've been following 7 years, not sure what Bell is smoking. I've never heard anything about his alibi. And I'm just curious. Like, I don't even want to argue whether we can verify it or not. I just want to know, what is it? You're telling me that we know everything about this case from top to bottom. We know everything about the cell phone. We know everything about the timeline. We know everything about the witnesses. The one thing that we don't know, what is Richard Allen's alibi? I agree, Shane. I agree. Dan's part of the chosen people. That's a good question too, Kathy. And why didn't his loving wife testify on his behalf? I mean, even if she didn't have anything to say, she was at work all day, right? Okay, well, what were you doing that day, Kathy? Well, I woke up in the morning. Was Richard Allen with you? Yeah, he was asleep. I woke him up. He made breakfast for me. I gave him a kiss. He was being kind of funny that morning. And then I went to work and came home, and he was asleep on the couch around 6 o'clock or around 3 or around whatever. By 4:30, I came home and he was right there. He didn't seem wrong. He didn't have any markings on him. He didn't look like he was in a fight. It was nothing was different about that day. Bam. How huge would that be for Richard Allen? But the fact is, that's not the truth. The truth is, he was acting fucked up all day that day. Welcome in, Elizabeth Ford. Isn't his story that he was standing on the bridge checking his stocks on a cell phone he didn't bring to the bridge that day? I don't know, Elizabeth. I don't know what his alibi is. I mean, this is an honest question. At this point, I'm just curious. What is his alibi? How does anyone confidently know Allen won't receive an appeal? Weren't people confident about a plea? Yeah, I was very confident about a plea, but that was me giving Richard Allen credit. And I'm not a professional. I'm not a lawyer. I don't even know a whole lot about the process. So that's just my opinion. But when it comes to the appeal, that's 100% different. It's very rare to get an appeal. You have to have a good reason. Like the defense asking for the judge to extend the time, stating we didn't have enough time to present our case. If Judge Gold would have ignored that, that's something that they could have gotten appeal over, right? The judge isn't allowing us to defend our client. Now, them saying, "Oh, well, you can't allow the Odinism stuff in there." Well, there's rules to this kind of stuff. You can't distract the jury, and you can't waste time in the courtroom. So if you don't have a nexus, which they don't, right? Brad Holder, he had an alibi. Patrick Westfall took a lie detector test, had an alibi. There was just no nexus. And if there was a nexus, I would be asking the same question. What are their alibis? And that's just my opinion. There's no way he's getting an appeal. Do I know? No. You have your own opinion. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, Richard Allen, where was your car? Did you see Richard Allen pull in? Did you see his car at this time? It's a lot of little things, but you have to know what the alibi is first before you can scrutinize it. He doesn't even have one. At least Brian Koberger has an alibi that we can scrutinize, right? And we can say, well, maybe he was just driving around. The thing about Richard Allen is he can't even make one up, because if he does, there's people there that he interacted with that will prove him wrong, that will say, that's not true, Richard Allen. I believe that you're innocent, but that's not true, man. You left my house around 12. So if you're leaving Mexico, Indiana around 12, how are you getting to the Monon High Bridge Trail around 12? You're not. You're lying. And if you're going to put me under oath, I'm going to have to tell the court the truth. So the answer to that question, why nobody came forward for Richard Allen, is because they weren't willing to lie and break the law for him. And there's no reason to bring them on that stand or into that trial if it's just going to hurt your client. Remember, if it's not helpful, all they got to do is plead the fifth. So if the prosecution called any of these witnesses up and asked them those questions, all they're going to say is, I plead the fifth. I don't think so. I think she's done. I think she's done with this case. That's good, this account. Joe Newman, once again, the state of Indiana they owe us everything. We're a public nation. We're put on trial by the public. We're judged by the public, by servants of the public, a jury of the public. You're accused by the public. Law enforcement is a public service. Those are the ones who are bringing the charges against Richard Allen. They're hired by our tax dollars. They're absolutely obligated to the public. I mean, we can agree to disagree on that, but that's just the way our country is run. Everything is public. They're 100% obligated to provide the public with the information of what happened in that trial. Yeah, it is. He says all the old head Richard Allen supporters are taking advantage of those. I don't know what that is, V. Well, Cyber Warrior, they don't have a conscience. They don't care about the victims' families. They've been abusive towards them. I'm telling you, there's a pattern here. You got to be a little bit nuts. I wouldn't doubt it, Curious. I wouldn't doubt it. So, Brian Jagger, what do you think Mata thinks of the alibi? I don't know. He couldn't answer that question. But he was the one that slipped up during our interview and said, "Yeah, I spoke with Richard Allen's family. He was, in fact, um, in Mexico, Indiana that morning." So I don't think he meant to slip that information, because basically that kind of proves that his confession was accurate. So if we can prove that Richard Allen confessed to Dr. Wall and said, "Hey, my day started out with me being in Mexico, Indiana, or Peru, with my mother." Well, now we know that that's a fact. According to Bob Mata, who has been involved with Richard Allen's family and with his defense team, that is a fact. So if we know that that part of the confession is a fact, is it safe to assume that the rest is accurate? I think so. Here we go. I think we're going to get a straightforward answer here. October 13th, 2022, 10:57. Richard tells Mullen that he arrived at the trail around 11:53. Richard tells Leggett and Mullen that he probably left around 1:30. Okay. So we're getting there. So Richard Allen's part of his alibi is that he left by 1:30. And that's good that's all good and fine, guys. Where did he go? Where did he go? His wife didn't want to perjure herself on the stand. I don't think anybody did, CJK. Nobody could go on that stand and honestly give information that would help Richard Allen, or they would have been on the stand. I'm not saying that they think he's guilty, but they're not going to go up there and lie. The saying, it is entertainment. They get off on trying to come up with these crazy ideas like, oh, well, what if this? They were taken from the scene. It's very this intricate narrative, right? Um, that has to fit so perfectly. It's kind of strange. Yeah, I feel happy for Kathy, right, Kathy? Like, I feel good for Kathy Allen. Like, she doesn't have to worry about divorcing her husband. She doesn't have to worry about doing this and that. Like, she can start over. Oh yeah, Jimmy Savile still has his supporters. B Rob, the missing phone will have cleared him, right? Too bad it isn't available. Yeah, I mean, forget the phone. Let's just focus on the alibi. You guys, I'm gonna go refill my coffee real quick. Talk amongst yourselves. Damn it. Running low on coffee, guys. Put on another pot. Okay, let me zip on down to the bottom. Periwinkle. So I guess the moral of the story is this. When you ask people, okay, so you think Richard Allen is innocent and he's a convicted child killer. If he left the trails by 1:30, that means that he would have to leave Mexico, Indiana by 11:30, right? It's going to take you an hour to get to Delphi and pick up beer. 15 minutes to grab your beer, check out, get back in your car, 45 minutes to get from Mexico, Indiana to Delphi. So there's 1 hour. So you get to Delphi at, let's say you left at 11:30, you reach Delphi at 12:30. So that fits, right? You stop by your house, takes you another 15 minutes to get your jacket and get to the trails. You're there at, by 1 o'clock, 12:45, and you leave by 1:30. Just a quick walk. I mean, I would believe that, right? But the truth is, he most likely didn't leave his mother in Mexico, Indiana at 11:30. She's probably going to tell us that he left more around 12:30. So if he leaves closer to 12, that means that he's getting back to Delphi at 1, because it's a 45-minute drive and it's going to take 15 minutes to stop by the gas station, pick up a six-pack or store, whatever. So the truth is going to prove that Richard Allen is the killer. His mom's not going to lie about that. She's going to say, well, he left closer to 12. Well, you can't be at the trails from 12:30 to 1:30 if you're leaving Mexico, Indiana at 12. It's just not mathematically possible. Goat Dog says either Richard Allen did it or he is the most unluckiest person to ever live. No, it's not even that. I mean, if you don't provide an alibi, how are you expecting to get off from a crime? So it would be Richard Allen didn't do it or he's the stupidest person alive. Because I don't know anybody dumb enough to go through a murder trial and not tell the jury what you were doing. Okay. You're telling me you're not responsible for murdering these two girls. Okay. I'm not convinced that you did it. So just tell me what it was that you were doing. Okay. So you admitted to being on the trails from 12 to 1:30. That's fine. Who else were you with? Well, I stopped and I saw my mother earlier that day. Okay, well, if we sit down and talk with your mom, is she going to be able to corroborate your story? Absolutely not, because it's a fucking lie. That's the only reason you wouldn't provide that information during a trial where you're being accused of murder. So you can go ahead and support a child killer all you want, but that's going to be my first question for you every time. That's why I stick with you. You make me think, why didn't his mom and sister testify that they left her house at such and such time? Think about how helpful that would have been. Okay, Mrs. Allen, just going to have a few questions for you. So we know now that Richard Allen was with you during the day, correct? What time did he leave? Well, he left us around 11, anywhere between 11 and 11:30. Okay, well, that fits right with Richard Allen's timeline. He could have easily, we know he's a speeder, so maybe it only took him 35 minutes to get back from Mexico. He has all these speeding tickets. That makes sense. He likes to drive fast. That would have got him on the trails by 12 and home by 1:30. Everything fits. Next question is, why all the people that we interviewed on the trails that were there from 12 to 1:30, nobody saw you, Richard? You said you were sitting on the bench. You were walking up and down the trails. Nobody saw you, buddy. You told us you saw 3 girls. Where are the 3 girls that you saw between 12 and 1:30? Who are those people? You're telling me 3 teenage girls didn't come forward after finding out somebody was murdered. Maybe they were from a different country. They were just visiting. They don't even know about the Delphi murders, right? So there's nobody to verify. And those girls just vanished. Yeah, it's not true, but I know that early on in the case, everybody said he looks like everybody. And I can see that. I can see it. Maybe he meant all 6 beers were gone by 1:30. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. Why did Richard Allen not want to go to lunch with you, mom, sister? You know, these are some of the questions they would ask. Why did he blow you off? Did you guys get in an argument? Oh, yeah, he was fucking pissed. He was triggered. Richard Allen was telling people while he was in prison that he was molested as a child. I mean, guys, he fits the fucking profile 100%. What's up, JT? Yeah. Curious Contrarian, it's amazing, isn't it? A dark cloud has been removed from her life. Yeah, I guarantee she's happy. Like, she gets to start over. I feel like she lucked out. If anything, she was in danger, if you ask me. Yep. What's up, Slink? Thank you, Sleuth, for your decency and common sense. Great show. Thank you. Welcome in. Okay. So that's the closest we've got. Okay, Richard Allen, you're being accused of a double homicide. You're telling me that you left at 1:30? That's it? So if you ask anybody who supports Richard Allen, well, what's his alibi? The only answer they're going to give you is, well, he went home. He was home by 1:30. They didn't say that during the trial. Yeah, they had it in their hand. Lola says no, but I think he took some pills and alcohol at the same time. He drank cheap beer in the driveway in a lawn chair. He drank Coors Light, I believe, which is cheap beer. But I definitely think the whole 6-pack thing was a half truth. Yeah, fuck law enforcement. Fuck Nick McClelland. Fuck Judge Gold. None of that matters. We're not talking about that. I could care less about those people. They did their job. They're supposed to do that. They work for the public. They work for Indiana. They're supposed to be doing those things. Yep. Tax dollars. Everything in the United States is public. That's why we have the Freedom of Information Act. Not that I know of, Shane. Not that I know. Also, I'm not defending, just trying to prevent an echo. For sure. Yeah, don't be scared to speak your mind here. Just be ready for a little pushback. All right. So I still haven't, nobody's been able to answer. The closest answer that we've gotten to what Richard Allen's alibi is that he left by 1:30. Okay. That's it. That's the only information that you have. He left by 1:30. Oh, and I think somebody also mentioned that he went home and took a nap. Joe says, if you're not from Indiana, you didn't pay for anything. Forensic accounting here. This is a state level case, not federal. I know that. The FBI did work that case, though. That's federal. But when I say the public, I'm referring to Indiana. Wife says he's been on anxiety meds since 1991. I bet he took some that day with his beer. Yeah, whatever it was, I'm pretty sure he was fucked up. I get the feeling that there was some kind of substance abuse or he was under the influence for sure. Recipe for disaster. Cyber Warrior says what he was doing was killing. Well, yeah, that's what he's accused of. Just imagine, okay, what were you doing, Richard Allen? If you're not committing murder, well, I left before 1:30 and I went and took a nap. That's it. That's all the information we have about Richard Allen's alibi. Interesting. Apparently, he was with his mother that day. Why didn't she come forward? Why didn't she testify? It would have been easy. I saw Richard Allen. He left around 10:30. Everything seemed normal. I didn't see him after that. Boom. Done deal. That would have been huge for him. But the truth is that they were not going to perjure themselves. So continue to support Richard Allen, who is a convicted child killer. And remember, there was a sexual assault attempt as well. And somebody who slit the throats of 2 teenage girls for no reason, really. For absolutely no reason. He would have gotten maybe 5 years at the most he didn't rape them. He may have gotten more, maybe 10 years for kidnapping and attempted sexual assault. That would have been it. But the truth is, he didn't give a fuck. He wasn't worried about prison. He was worried about his wife. Remember, he had a personality disorder. He had latched onto her. CJK says that's truly revolting are those who say they care for the girls in one breath, but their next breath is a support for Allen. Exactly. Well, their thing is that if you're convicting an innocent man, it's not justice, right? If you really care about Abby and Libby, you wouldn't be pushing the conviction of a guilty man. Well, he's not innocent. He's been proven guilty in a court of law, and the man doesn't have an alibi. So that's it, guys. That's the kryptonite right there. You don't need to argue about this. You don't need to argue about a cell phone. You don't need to argue about a timeline. It's a simple question. All right, if Richard Allen is innocent, what's his alibi? It really puts it into perspective. I don't know if he'll ever talk, Shane. I'm getting these vibes that as long as he keeps saying he's innocent, he might get some support in return. If, it'll help everybody else stay in denial. Goat Dog says, Sleuth, the technology angle is what convinced me. There are so many technological things that could have easily exonerated him. Cell phone, smartwatch data, CCTV, even a paper receipt. He had nothing. Nothing. You went home. Did you turn on the TV? What were you watching? What when you left your mom and you picked up beer, right? It's just weird that his confession, we find that there's truth in that confession. That makes me believe that everything in that confession is real. That's what really happened that day. That's the only thing that makes sense. And the only reason that his defense team didn't bring up an alibi during this, how do you expect to get your client off? You don't have an alibi? You don't even attempt to present an alibi during his trial? You're just going to leave it up in the air? That's horrible. Imagine convincing your client to keep fighting and they don't have an alibi. How fucking selfish is that? Joe Newman says, I think that's part of the problem. Does being a YouTuber mean you're media? Well, the Constitution makes everybody who is a citizen of the United States the media. You know, it's your First Amendment right. The second you pick up a camera or you pick up a pen and you start writing a story or telling a story, you are now the media. You may not be mainstream. You may be considered alternative, like me, but yeah, it's definitely the media. Are you CNN? No. Are you just some guy with an old phone on a street corner documenting something that's going on? Yeah, still the media, though. Or a journalist, even at that. If you're putting stories together, compiling them, and presenting them to public, you're a journalist. Yeah, she didn't take the stand. And even if they forced you to take the stand, all you have to do is plead the fifth. So they couldn't make his mother talk. They can't make his wife talk. You can't even force anybody to answer certain questions. Like, I can't answer that question. You know, I plead the fifth on that. I'll answer all your other questions, but you know, I can't answer that question for fear of my own safety. What's up, Periwinkle? Has any of the jurors spoken yet? No, but I believe that they have reached out to some people who are part of the media and even some YouTubers. What's up, Jessica? They can't get the footage because it was 5 years later and it wasn't saved. Well, yeah, he is, Rightfield. He's a convicted child killer with no alibi. Yep, that's right, Saint. Kathy Allen had the legal right not to testify. And even if you're forced to testify, you don't have to testify. You're just being forced to take the stand. Just plead the fifth. And if you tell the lawyers or the prosecutor, like, I'm just going to plead the fifth, they're not even going to bother with it. Joe says, to be completely transparent is impossible, and I feel horrible for the families involved. The goal is correct. It's generational, even for Richard Allen. Oh, yeah. Richard Allen's daughter is one of the biggest victims of this whole fiasco. But once again, he's the source of the harm. If he wouldn't have done what he did that day, everything would have been fine. But after he did what he did, you have people who are supporting him. They can't focus on the simplest of questions. I don't want to talk about his alibi. Why did all those SMS messages go through at 4:30 a.m.? Huh? We're not talking about his alibi. Let's talk about that. Well, what about the tool mark evidence? I don't want to talk about that. That's not beneficial to my cause. Yeah, my heart breaks for her, Silas. Silas Stingy says, so sad for all involved. I feel for Richard Allen's daughter. Yeah, my heart breaks for her. Our fathers, well, in most cases, they're our heroes. We grow up looking up to our fathers, admiring them. That was taken from her. Her children won't have a grandfather on her side of the family. It'll always be this weird, I don't know, weird energy on holidays. The little kids are going to be asking, like, well, what about my grandfather? Oh, well, he's in prison. We don't want to talk about that. Who all Alan told he was out there, either on the trails or the bridge or the trails and bridge. Did we learn that? Well, apparently he lied to Kathy about what he did that day. And I mean, I'm fine with the fact that he came to the trails at 12 and left at 1:30. I mean, if that's his alibi, I'm okay to start there. We can begin to scrutinize it if that's his alibi. But I don't know what his alibi is. And the fact that we don't know his alibi and there's still people supporting him um, just proves that there's something else going on here. There's something wrong with those folks. They're not looking for the truth whatsoever. It was inconclusive. Of course it was. Yeah, I feel bad for them, and they're not going to lie for him, you know. Think about it. We now know it was a fact that he was with his mother in Mexico, Indiana. She did not take the stand. Can any of you explain that? Any of you Richard Allen supporters? I mean, just help me. Help me to understand this. How you're supporting a man who can't account for his whereabouts that day. Yep, that's true, Joe. And she ain't going to go and lie in that courtroom. Yeah, we're not sure the saint, so we're just going to give her the benefit, right? Ron Logan. Yeah, he never got to see this thing finished. Jessica says, so in your perception, how you expect a defense attorney to behave, their job is actually, hence the name, to defend the accused. Correct. So, yeah, we're agreeing on that. But what I'm saying is you shouldn't expect them to be honest or to being appealing to that part of themselves. They're just here to defend. And if they can be very creative, just like the Tinfoil Hat Club, that's what they get off on, is being creative. Creative ways. They try to find creative ways of explaining things away, right? They believe they're being critical, but it's the opposite of critical when you step over factual informations and you have to make a stretch to connect certain things. That's why I always say, to your own self be true, at the very least. Through they asked for the state to give them that info, though, Dan, and for the state to be sanctioned for not turning it over. It is, Silas. It's disgusting. But right, if it wasn't for them, nobody would have found the conspiracy. If it wasn't for these brilliant YouTubers, nobody would have ever considered Kelsey as the actual killer. They're heroes. We just don't know it yet. That's funny, this account. It's a good thought, happy thought. I think she was head in the sand at worst, but sticking by him is still hard to believe. I cannot get my head around that. I don't know. The same. If you have two defense attorneys who are convincing you that other people may be responsible for this, your husband is lying, he's not confessing, and you're married to this man, what are you going to do? Just abandon him? I don't blame her for standing by him. I blame him for not having the balls, to be honest. It's like he's afraid. He's afraid to be alone. He's like, I'm going through all this shit. He doesn't care about Abby and Livy or their families. He's pissed off that he's going to be facing the rest of his life in prison. He doesn't want to do it alone. Yeah, we get that, Joe. Yeah, that was already disgusting. That just proves that they didn't give a shit about the victims. They were trying to taint a jury. They used a man, they used a friend to do it. And I guarantee they had the conversation of, hey, like, we're all attorneys here. Like, we need you to do this for us. And if anything, if there's any backlash, we'll get you off. That's exactly what happened. That's why you got to be careful around attorneys. You know, they'll get you. Silas, I understand defending your client, but weaving around the gag order and putting out the names of innocent people was despicable. Hey, any means necessary, right? Yeah, Joe, that was really weird. It's always something, right? There's always some kind of angle. It's always some kind of conspiracy. It's fucking weird. Well, if I could wear my headphones and my tinfoil hat, I would. You guys like it? Styling. It works too. I don't hear the voices in my head when I put that on. What's up, Rescue? What's up, Bully? Welcome in. All right, we'll go to a few more comments, then we're going to bounce. So we went through this entire live stream, and not one person could tell us what Richard Allen's alibi is. I've done 2 videos on it. Nobody can tell me in the comments. It's like the most difficult question for Richard Allen supporters. What is his alibi? I'm not asking you to prove it. I don't want to debate you about it. I just want to know what it is. I'm very curious how a man being accused of killing 2 children can go through an entire trial and not tell the jury anything about what they were doing that day. Very strange. Jessica says, wait, wasn't Odinism investigated by Click and Pharisee and their finding reported to the state, which the defense then obtained? Well, if you listen to what I said, Jessica, that's what I said. I said that there were pieces of Odin that pointed at Odinism in the discovery, but the defense team didn't find it. Richard Allen came to them and said, hey, I'm being threatened by these guards with Odinism patches and tattoos. They're threatening to kill me if I don't confess. So even though that there were things pointing at a ritualistic, or that they were investigating the ritualistic aspect, even though there were things that pointed to that in the discovery, the defense hadn't pointed it out. They haven't highlighted it. They weren't even going that route until Richard Allen said, hey, look, you guys need to go this route. So even though there were stuff from Click and Pharisee in the discovery, the defense team hadn't highlighted it or pinpointed it or pulled it, separated it from the rest of the discovery until Richard Allen came forward. Then they began to cherry pick. Okay, Richard Allen's telling us something about Odinism and these guards who are threatening him. Let's see what we can find in the discovery that supports that. And here we are. That sounds fair. That's fair, this account. You know, and I think it's good that you did have some investigators who were looking at the ritualistic part of all of this, the possibility of it. It's good that they went down that rabbit hole. It's good that you had Click and Pharisee doing their job and double checking that information. But it didn't lead to anything. Shane says, I heard she wasn't home until 6 or 6:30, and he was there. Don't know how true it is. Came from another creator. Yeah, I would like to know what time she went to work that day and what time she came home. Because if she didn't go to work until what, noontime, that means that she would have seen Richard Allen when he came home to pick up his clothes or to bundle. And why wasn't Richard Allen already bundled? Why did he need to stop by his home? Why did he need to put on a jacket? Bully's asking, what did Allen say in his initial interview or interrogation? Well, the closest we've been able to come is that he said that he left by 1:30, and it was only a short hike at the trail. And then I did read somewhere that he said he went home and took a nap. But don't you find it strange that we don't have a clear answer? Richard Allen, let's say he's on the stand. Okay, so what time did you leave, Richard? Well, I got there around 12 and I left at 1:30. Okay, well, what'd you do after that? I just went home and took a nap. Well, the problem with that is that he was with people earlier that day that can confirm or disprove that. So the only reason that they wouldn't be called to the stand is because they would be disproving that. Jessica says he paid just now. The defense wouldn't have known about it if Richard Allen wouldn't have told them. That I don't know, but all I know is that they wouldn't have. That the fact is that he was the first one to bring it up. Would they have found it and gone down that route anyway? We won't know because that's not what happened. You know, we can't go back in the past and say what if. But the fact of the matter is, it is factual that the first time that the defense heard the term Odinism or Odin was from Richard Allen. Yep, that's right, Dan. He's not getting an appeal. There's no reason for the appeal. Yeah, I was investigating. I'm not saying that it has nothing to do with the crime. I'm just saying there's nothing to support that. No, all we can do is deal with the factual information. We can speculate from that as long as the foundation is based on factual information. I'm fine with that. That's true, Go Dog. Who would know that area better than somebody whose private driveway runs under the Monon? I would say anybody that frequents that trail. I would say anybody that frequents that trail, goes off the trails, um, who crosses that bridge constantly. Because according to the people that lived on that side of the bridge, Brad, the Webbers, they really didn't hike the trails that often. So even though they might know that part of the area, they may not know the Monon High Bridge Trail more than somebody who frequents the trails, right? Yeah, I agree with that, V. That I don't know, Crystalline. That I don't know. Um, we hear a lot about mugshots. Here, let's go into some of my collection of mugshots. We'll end with this. You know, Richard Allen didn't match the mugshots. Well, how many people do? Man, the logic. I mean, you guys are entitled to your own opinion. But I mean, if you're not going to ask yourselves these questions. So here was the BTK's sketch. This is the BTK. I mean, this looks like, what's that comedian's name? Tommy Lee? He doesn't even look like the sketch. Well, it must not be him then, right? We got the wrong guy. Son of Sam. Oh, that's actually pretty accurate. The eyebrows don't match. There's no way that's him. Look at the haircut. That doesn't look anything like Jeffrey Dahmer. That doesn't look like the Son of Sam. And that sure as hell doesn't look like the BTK. That's Tommy Lee, the comedian. Or what the hell's his name? Little Asian guy from Mad TV. So I guess we have the wrong person. Jeffrey Dahmer is not the guy. Sketch doesn't look anything like him. So we got to let him go. Doesn't look like her. We got to let her go. This actually looks like the one-armed man from the movie The Fugitive. So doesn't look like Richard Ramirez. Got to let him go. And Ted Bundy doesn't have an afro. So he's definitely, we can't let him go. He's been put to death. But oh, yeah, look, this guy's neck is too skinny. Doesn't even look like the sketch. Look at the haircut. I thought you knew that victims of violent crime have to have a photographic memory. And I don't need a receipt, Jessica. I just want him to answer the question. It's why is everybody goes around it? What is Richard Allen's alibi? It's hard to just say he doesn't have one, because if he doesn't have one, that means that he's a guilty man. That's the hard part. That's why it's hard for you to say it. Everybody goes around it. Well, what about Patrick Westfall? His alibi was that he was at home. Okay, well, his son was with him, and he took a polygraph. Richard Allen refused to take a polygraph and had nobody to back up his alibi. I still don't know if he's even provided one. Him saying that he left the trails before 1:30 and went home and took a nap, that's not an alibi. We need to establish a timeline for you that day, buddy. Imagine going through an entire trial where people are accusing you of murder, and not one time are you going to stand up and say, well, I wasn't committing murder because I was doing this. Yeah, there's no way, Audra. That's ridiculous. Hey, Pipers, better late than never. That if he didn't self snitch, there's real possibility that he would have never been caught. I don't think so, Goat Dog. I think he would have been caught. That's the thing. Like, him coming forward was the only thing that bought him a little bit of time. If I come forward, they won't come looking for me. That's my only hope. Because if they come looking for me, then they're going to become looking with suspicion. But if I come forward, I'm just another guy, another witness, and I don't have to deal with that suspicion. And maybe something will happen to where I get lucky, and that's what happened. He wasn't on the radar. You got to remember, people like him, the BTK, they don't have any remorse. That's why he killed Abby and Libby. He had no remorse. All he cared about was them talking. He didn't want them coming forward and saying, hey, this guy forced us off the bridge. He made us take off all of our clothes. We were able to escape. Thank God Brad Weber showed up when he did. We were able to get away, and we were interrupted. There was no way he was allowing his wife to find out about that. I don't think he cared about jail. I don't think he cared about anything. Just his wife finding out. And he didn't care. He killed him, and he went home and went about his business like nothing happened. And that's what he said as part of his confession to Dr. Wallace, that he committed the murder, covered them with sticks, went home, and went about his life like it didn't even happen. So these people are able to hide in plain sight. So you have to give them some credit, right? The investigator, if they don't have any suspicion of this guy, the case just started. They don't have really any indication or profile of what they're looking for. And here's this Richard Allen guy who's coming forward, called the tip line. And the reason he did that was so that he could breathe, right? The reason he covered the girls with sticks is so that would buy him some time, bought him 24 hours. Everything Richard Allen does is reactive. One decision after the other. Hey, Beach Fairy, what's up? Bad actors, good to see you. All right, guys, that's going to do it, I think, for today's live stream. If you're part of the replay crew, leave some comments. Let us know what you think. And I still haven't heard what Richard Allen's alibi is. So if you guys know it and you can provide it, please do so in the comments. I would like to, if you want to shoot me an email, sleuthintuition@gmail.com. I mean, imagine being accused of murder, and you don't even try to give an alibi. Yeah, you're right about that, Shane. Very gross. I think those that are labeled Richard Allen supporters are more against the techniques of law enforcement than they support Richard Allen. That's just part of it. That's just part of the recipe. You have to have a hatred for law enforcement and the government, which is fine. I support that. But also, you have to have some type of weird something against victims' families. Like they're always under a veil of suspicion. So those two things are in common because that's part of the pattern that I've noticed. They accused DP, they harassed his family. They were 100% sure that Ron Logan was the guy. So I guess it's not DP, it's Ron Logan now, right? And it's not the guy who actually did it. And so what was it? It was Kelsey with the help of Odinism, and Ron Logan facilitated it by allowing them to have a pig roast and a ritual sacrifice on his property. But yet they can't explain Richard Allen's alibi. Vincent, I'm thinking about pretending to be Sleuth on the internet. Have fun, buddy. You wouldn't be the first. But the point is, in early days, he wasn't a suspect, so why would he have saved a receipt to prove it? Maybe he doesn't have a receipt. I'm not telling him to back it up. I would just like to know. I'm not telling him to provide a receipt. Just what is the alibi? What were you doing, Richard Allen? I'm not asking for a receipt. I'm just asking for the answer to the question. Where were you before you came to the trails? Right? He can't talk about that. He can't talk about where he was because if he does, then the people that he was with are going to tell the prosecution and law enforcement how his timeline fits right into the killer's timeline. CJK, plead the fifth. It's that simple. Do you know where Richard Allen was that day? I plead the fifth. Was he in good spirits that morning? Yeah, he seemed fine. He seemed normal. Can you help us with the timeline? No, I plead the fifth. That's true, Curious. Not only that, she was the one that leaked the 40 caliber bullet information to the public. Beach Fairy says because he was one of only a few people in the exact area 2 kids were killed. I'd be keeping all receipts, most definitely in my phone from the time, in case they called me back in. I mean, forget all that stuff. Just tell me, like, what were you doing? Even if you can't recall, even if you don't know for sure, even if it's a little hazy. Nothing. Richard Allen had nothing. You think you can go through an entire trial where you're being accused of murder and you don't talk about what you were doing that day? Come on, guys. Time to get your head out of your ass. So he gets to the bridge at 12:10 p.m., sees nobody, nobody sees him. Well, remember, he saw 3 girls. If those aren't the 3 girls that saw Bridge Guy, that means that we're dealing with 3 other girls. They didn't come forward. Maybe they were from another country and they were just visiting and they still haven't heard about the Delphi case. It's possible. But it's just funny that 3 girls who saw the Bridge Guy fit the exact description of the girls that he spoke with. Bully says maybe those 70 days of missing interviews would have cleared Richard Allen. How? Why? That's it. You ask somebody about Richard Allen's alibi, what do they say? Oh, what about the missing interviews? Well, what about Richard Allen's alibi? Let's start there. I'll be happy to go to missing interviews, go into the Odinism, but I want to start with Richard Allen's alibi. See, that's the thing with these folks who support Richard Allen is they skip right over the most important things and they make connections where they don't really exist. Here's a good example. Crystal Lynn says, how many tips came in about Brad Holder, Ron Logan, Patrick Westfall? A lot more than Richard Allen, which was his own. Okay. That's all good and fine. But what was his alibi? You can't get away with murder or even being accused of murder if you can't explain what you were doing that day. I'm not even asking you to prove it, because that's where the truth is. There would be no question about Richard Allen's guilt or innocence if his mother would have testified. There would be no question about it. That was their only hope in his defense, was not touching the alibi. We'll just ignore it and we'll hope for the best. Yep, she has a vendetta. Curious. 100%. She's come on my show and talked about it. Nobody wants Richard Allen to rot. They don't want a child killer running the streets. We all want justice for these girls. See, that's what they always say. We want justice for these girls, like they care about the girls. But it's not real justice if you convict an innocent man. Okay, well, if this man is innocent, what is his alibi? Do you see where we're at now? So you can keep going in circles and avoiding the question, because it puts everything into perspective for you. I know that you want to avoid it because you're part of the Richard Allen is innocent tinfoil hat club. This is the question that nobody will ever sit down and discuss. Anybody that supports Richard Allen, they won't talk about his alibi. They have to talk about everything else. They will never just admit he doesn't have an alibi, because if they say that, then in their own mind it starts to become real. Well, if he doesn't have an alibi, that is kind of weird. I never really thought about that. Like, how do you go through a trial and you're not able to explain what you were doing that day? That is kind of weird. So they just deflect from that. That muddies up the water for them. So I don't want to talk about anything until we can address his alibi, because nothing else matters. If you can't, and the thing is you can't lie about your alibi either. Because if you were with your mother, who you know is a church-going, good Christian woman, you know that she's not going to lie for you. You're fucked. You can't even make up an alibi, because you have this truthful woman over here who, if she gets in an interview with the law enforcement, she's not going to lie. You put her on a stand in that courtroom, I'm not going to lie. So the only option is keep her away. That's the only way it'll benefit our client, is to keep these people away. So you can talk about Odinism, you can talk about all these other things, right? Dan Doolin, Patrick Westfall. But let's not talk about Richard Allen's alibi, because then I have to admit that he does not have one. And we've already heard verification that he was in fact with his mother in Mexico, which the first time that we've ever even heard that was during one of his confessions. So you go ahead and you support a child killer if you want to. Just let me know what his alibi is. I'm very curious. Oh, here we go. Crystal Lynn. I just pray none of you go to the police to help them out. Well, the thing is, I would have an alibi. See, you see how you keep going around it? If I didn't commit a crime, that means that I could prove it, right? And usually you prove it by providing an alibi. So just why can't you focus in on that question, Crystal? I'm not trying to beat you up or anything. The answer is always something else. It's not, oh, well, he didn't have one, or um, they just completely sidestep the question like it didn't happen. You guys can't keep sidestepping that question because I'm going to keep putting it right in your face. What is Richard Allen's? And I'm going to keep asking this question until you ask it of yourselves. That's it. Ask yourselves that question. All right, let's go to a couple more. I just want to get closer to the bottom. If those girls vanished on or from your property, would you have helped search? B, go to sleep? What? Would you have A, helped search? B, go to sleep? I don't understand the question. Because if you're referring to Ron Logan, he stayed up all night, allowing people to come onto his property. He could have said, nope, that's trespassing. Yeah, some people they can't handle logic. It just doesn't work that way. They're having too much fun discussing with their cult members, the possibilities. Yep, we'll just keep it simple. If you support Richard Allen or even the possibility that he's innocent, just leave a comment here if you're part of that replay crew and tell me what his alibi is. And if we know for a fact that he was with his mother that morning, why didn't she come forward? Why didn't she testify for him? You guys don't want to talk about that, do you? So I don't think I got through to anybody. They're having too much fun talking about Odinism and the corruption and how the Freemasons covered up this crime. Of course not. Hopefully, they ask about Richard Allen's alibi because that's the only question that matters. The biggest part of Richard Allen's defense just never happened. It just doesn't exist. Would think police corruption. Dude, we cover police corruption on this channel constantly. We cover innocent people going to jail, being released, fighting to be released. We talk about coerced confessions. Like we're not one-sided here. That's what you don't understand. We're looking at every side. And that's all I'm asking you guys to do here. You scrutinized Brad Holder's alibi, right? You still think he's involved. But yet you ignore Richard Allen's. You're like, nope, nope. I'm not talking about that. You hear the question, Sleuth is asking you, what is Richard Allen's alibi? And then when you go to think about it in your head, it's like something just freaks out and the poles shift. It's like you have a glitch in your mind. So, I mean, that's all I got for you guys. Do your best to try to understand what Richard Allen's alibi is. And think about it. You're supporting this man. And not once did he talk about what he did that day. Yet you're still supporting him. Big shout out to Dan ×2. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. Alex, thank you. Cindy Lean. And we have a donation from Vala. Hope you're doing good, Vala. Crystal's triggered now, I think. See, you guys are making shit up, not following facts. Do you know for sure he was messed up, drunk? Nobody's making anything up. We don't know what he was doing. That's the point, Crystal. That's the thing. He's the one that said he was drinking. He's the one that said he followed the girls, killed them, was interrupted, and covered them with sticks, went home like nothing happened. Those are his words. But what is his official alibi? If he's lying, if he was being coerced or under duress when he made those confessions, what is the true and accurate statement from him? What was he actually doing? I'm definitely willing to hear it so that we can scrutinize it. But he doesn't have an alibi. How do you go through a murder trial and you can't tell the jury what you were doing? Crazy. What's up, L.A. Wilkes in the building? Contrary says, I love conspiracies too. I don't shy away from them. But to me, a conspiracy is just a conversation. And if you have a conversation and you just ignore the factual information, you're not being helpful to yourself. All right, guys, I missed a lot of comments. Shelly, sorry. Sorry I didn't get to you. I appreciate all of you, even those of you who are on the opposing side of this and who seem to be supporting Richard Allen. The question stands: how do you support a man that can't even provide you with an alibi? I mean, just make one up, dude. Yep, everyone is media. It's your First Amendment right. Freedom of press. All right, guys. I want to give a big shout out to all of you members, all of you mods who are keeping the chat chill, and those of you who continue to donate to my channel. Thank you so much for the Cash Apps, the Venmos, the Zells, the Super Chats, and the Super Stickers. I wouldn't be able to do this if I didn't have that kind of support from you guys. It just would not make sense. I'm here because you make it possible. If you're part of the replay crew, let me know what you thought about today's live stream. And if you are part of the Richard Allen fan club and the Tinfoil Hat Club, the question is very simple. Don't deflect. Don't talk about anything other than the question that I'm asking you. It doesn't get any more simple than this. Okay? I'm going to make it very clear to you. What was Richard Allen's alibi? You're going around supporting a convicted child killer. You should be able to answer that question. So until next time, guys, I'll see you later.